You never really know what's going on behind closed doors, especially in a neighborhood where appearances are everything. In Willow Heights, everything looked perfect. The grass was trimmed within regulation height. Mailboxes were painted HOA-approved beige. American flags waved from precisely mounted brackets, and Claire Whitman, the HOA president, made sure it stayed that way. Claire wasn't just any HOA president. She was the type who color-coded enforcement violations and sent reminders with smiley faces that somehow still felt like threats. She lived at the top of Maple Hollow Drive in a two-story colonial with black shutters, a wraparound porch, and a reputation to uphold. People admired her for her organization, her assertiveness, and her picture-perfect life. But the truth? It was only picture-perfect on the outside. I moved to Willow Heights 2 years ago after getting a new job at a tech firm in the city. I thought I was trading chaos for calm, leaving behind the noise for fresh-cut lawns and neighborly waves. At first, that's exactly what I got. People were friendly enough so long as you followed the rules. The HOA was strict, but that was part of the charm, right? Then I met Ethan. He was Claire's son. Tall, quiet, always polite. You'd usually see him mowing the lawn or washing the family SUV. He went to a private college out of state, but came home for summers and winter break. Most folks didn't pay him much attention. He didn't cause trouble, didn't throw parties, didn't post political signs on the lawn. He just blended in. But there was something about Ethan that always caught my attention. It wasn't anything obvious. He just seemed like he was trying really hard to be invisible. The first time we actually talked was at a community block party last summer. I was hovering near the grill, trying to escape a conversation about fertilizer regulations, when Ethan walked up. "They take this stuff a little too seriously, huh?" he said, nodding toward a neighbor arguing over what shade of mulch counted as natural. I laughed. "Yeah, it's like a retirement home for control freaks." That made him smile, and for a moment I saw it, the mask slipping. We chatted for a while, mostly small talk. He told me he was studying architecture, but his mom wanted him to come back and take over the HOA board eventually. "She says it's in my blood," he joked. But the way he said it, it didn't sound like a dream. It sounded like a sentence. That day was the beginning of something. Over the next few weeks, we'd bump into each other more often. At the mailbox, on walks, at the park on the edge of the neighborhood. I learned he was into music, classical stuff mostly. He'd play piano late at night in the sunroom with the windows open. His mom hated when people heard it, called emotional nonsense. But he played anyway, like it was the only time he felt real. One evening we sat on the curb outside my house, just talking. The sun was setting, casting that golden glow across the rooftops. That's when Ethan went quiet, real quiet. "I ever tell you why I went to school out of state?" he asked. I shook my head. He hesitated. Then, barely louder than a whisper, he said, "Because I couldn't be myself here." I didn't push, I just waited. "My mom, she has this idea of who I'm supposed to be, and if I'm not that, I don't exist, not to her." Still, I said nothing. He wasn't looking for answers, just space to say the truth out loud. After that night, things shifted. We grew closer, but so did the tension. One morning, I got a notice from the HOA, unapproved lawn ornament. It was a small pride flag in my garden bed, nothing flashy, just a little rainbow heart on a stick. I'd had it there for months. Nobody had ever said anything. Until now. I removed it, but I knew it wasn't about the flag. It was a warning. A few days later, Ethan didn't show up for our usual walk. Then another day passed, and another. Finally, I knocked on his door. Claire answered. "Can I help you?" she said, with that tight-lipped smile that never quite touched her eyes. "I was just wondering if Ethan was around," I said. "He's busy with family matters. We're preparing for his internship interviews." "Right," I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Tell him I stopped by." She closed the door before I could say anything else. That night the piano didn't play. The next week I saw Claire at the HOA meeting. She was her usual self, handing out citations and quoting bylaws like scripture, but she looked strained, tired. Not a hair out of place, but something in her eyes had cracked. After the meeting, I caught Ethan sneaking out the side door of the clubhouse. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I shouldn't be talking to you," he said before I could even speak. "Why not?" She found my texts. That's when I realized she hadn't just found out we'd been spending time together. She found out everything. Ethan stared down at the pavement. She said I could either grow out of this phase or I could pack my bags. My stomach dropped. "And what did you say?" I told her I'm not going back to that house. He didn't. That night, he came to stay with me. We kept it quiet, no social posts, no visitors, but the gossip wheel in Willow Heights spun faster than ever. And Claire? She wasn't about to let go without a fight. On the edge of the guest bed, staring out the window. "I feel like I broke something," he said quietly. "You didn't break anything," I replied. "You just stopped pretending. That takes guts." He nodded, but didn't say much else. What surprised me most in the weeks that followed weren't the people who turned away. It was the ones who didn't. Linda, my neighbor across the street, started waving again. She even dropped off a pie one afternoon. "I don't care who lives with you," she said bluntly, "but your lawn is starting to look rough. Need to borrow my trimmer?" Then there was Michael, a newer resident with a husband who traveled for work. He pulled me aside after a walk and said, "What Claire's doing is disgusting. If you need backup at the next meeting, count on me." Slowly, quietly, support started building. People who were tired of the fake perfection. People who had secrets of their own tucked neatly behind their white picket fences. And then came the email. It was sent anonymously to every resident. The subject line read, "Do you know who's really running Willow Heights?" Attached was a PDF, 20 pages long, screenshots, meeting transcripts, photo evidence. It outlined every questionable decision Claire had made over the past 5 years. Nepotism, unfair fines, secret meetings. It even included an internal HOA memo about pushing family-first image priorities, which many interpreted as coded language against LGBTQ+ families. Nobody knew who sent it, but it broke the dam. By the end of the week, 5 board members resigned. A petition to remove Claire as HOA president started circulating. Ethan and I didn't have anything to do with it, at least not directly, but people were tired of living under her rule. Her mask had finally slipped, and underneath it wasn't strength or leadership, it was fear. Fear of difference. Fear of her own son. Claire tried to hold on. She called an emergency meeting, tried to paint it all as a smear campaign. "This is about respect," she shouted at the crowd. "This community was built on shared values." Someone from the back yelled, "Yeah, and one of those values is truth." That's when Ethan stood up. He walked to the front, calm, quiet, hands in his pockets. He didn't say much, just a few words. "I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to be myself, and I'm sorry if that threatens anyone's idea of what normal looks like. But I'm not going back in the closet so this neighborhood can keep pretending everything's perfect." Silence. Then someone clapped, then another. Claire didn't say a word. She stepped down a week later, on the edge of the guest bed, staring out the window. "I feel like I broke something," he said quietly. "You didn't break anything," I replied. "You just stopped pretending. That takes guts." He nodded, but didn't say much else. What surprised me most in the weeks that followed weren't the people who turned away. It was the ones who didn't. Linda, my neighbor across the street, started waving again. She even dropped off a pie one afternoon. "I don't care who lives with you," she said bluntly, "but your lawn is starting to look rough. Need to borrow my trimmer?" Then there was Michael, a newer resident with a husband who traveled for work. He pulled me aside after a walk and said, "What Claire's doing is disgusting. If you need backup at the next meeting, count on me." Slowly, quietly, support started building. People who were tired of the fake perfection. People who had secrets of their own tucked neatly behind their white picket fences. And then came the email. It was sent anonymously to every resident. The subject line read, "Do you know who's really running Willow Heights?" Attached was a PDF, 20 pages long, screenshots, meeting transcripts, photo evidence. It outlined every questionable decision Claire had made over the past 5 years. Nepotism, unfair fines, secret meetings. It even included an internal HOA memo about pushing family-first image priorities, which many interpreted as coded language against LGBTQ+ families. Nobody knew who sent it, but it broke the dam. By the end of the week, 5 board members resigned. A petition to remove Claire as HOA president started circulating. Ethan and I didn't have anything to do with it, at least not directly. But people were tired of living under her rule. Her mask had finally slipped, and underneath it wasn't strength or leadership, it was fear. Fear of difference. Fear of her own son. Claire tried to hold on. She called an emergency meeting, tried to paint it all as a smear campaign. "This is about respect," she shouted at the crowd. "This community was built on shared values." Someone from the back yelled, "Yeah, and one of those values is truth." That's when Ethan stood up. He walked to the front, calm, quiet, hands in his pockets. He didn't say much, just a few words. "I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to be myself, and I'm sorry if that threatens anyone's idea of what normal looks like. But I'm not going back in the closet so this neighborhood can keep pretending everything's perfect." Silence. Then someone clapped, then another. Claire didn't say a word. She stepped down a week later. When Claire Whitman stepped down as HOA president, it sent shockwaves through Willow Heights. To some, it felt like the neighborhood lost its backbone. To others, it was like someone finally opened the windows after years of stale air. But no matter what side people were on, one thing was clear: the neighborhood wasn't going back to the way it was. The official HOA notice announcing Claire's resignation was cold and brief. Claire Whitman has stepped down from her position effective immediately due to personal reasons. No thank you, no farewell, no cupcakes at the clubhouse. Just like that, the woman who ruled this place with an iron clipboard was gone. For a few days, things were weird, unsettled. Like everyone was walking around waiting for something else to happen. People who used to nod and wave now looked the other way, unsure of how to act without the queen of compliance directing the show. But slowly, things began to shift. A retired teacher named Mrs. Daniels volunteered to serve as interim president. She was sweet but no pushover, and her first action was a public review of the HOA's enforcement practices. She called for transparency, fairness, and humanity. 3 words we hadn't heard in this neighborhood in years. The tone changed immediately. The fear started to fade. The HOA stopped treating residents like children, and neighbors actually started talking to one another like people, not just rule enforcers or rule breakers. But for Ethan, the damage was already done. He tried to play it cool. He helped repaint the clubhouse, started jogging in the mornings again, and even brought over bagels for the Sunday neighborhood coffee meetup. But I could see it in his eyes. The tension hadn't left. Not really. "People keep looking at me like I'm the scandal," he said one evening, staring at his untouched dinner. "Like I'm the reason everything fell apart." "You're not," I told him. "You're the reason it started to get better." He nodded, but the weight didn't lift. And then, of course, there was Claire. She hadn't left the neighborhood, not yet. After stepping down, she holed up in her house like a ghost in a mansion, curtains drawn, porch light off, no piano music. The perfect house at the end of the street had turned into a haunted one. Rumors flew like wildfire. Some said she was suing the HOA, others claimed she was trying to move out. One neighbor swore they saw her late at night digging up her prized hydrangeas to take with her. Then one Saturday, she appeared at the community garden. Ethan and I were there watering the herb beds when she walked in. wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf like she was dodging paparazzi. For a moment, it was dead silent. You could hear the wind scraping the mulch. She didn't look at us, just walked to her old plot, yanked up a handful of tomatoes, and left without saying a word. It should have felt triumphant, but it didn't. It just felt sad. Claire had lost control, not just of the HOA, but of the image she'd spent years building. And when that image cracked, she had nothing underneath. No community, no close friends, not even her son. One evening, Ethan finally broke down. We were sitting on the back porch, the sun dipping below the rooftops, fireflies blinking in and out of view. I keep thinking maybe she just needs time, he said, his voice cracking. That maybe if I called her, it would all go back to normal. But then I remember normal was never really good. I didn't know what to say, because he was right. Sometimes people don't want to change. Sometimes they love control more than connection. And as much as that hurts, it's not your job to fix them. Maybe it's not about going back, I said. Maybe it's about going forward. He nodded slowly. I'm just tired of hiding. Even now, when everything's out in the open, I still feel like I'm hiding in plain sight. That's when we decided to stop pretending. The next HOA potluck was set for the following Saturday, and for the first time, we went together, as a couple. No whispers, no secrets, just honest. Ethan wore his favorite denim jacket. I wore the Love is Love t-shirt that had been buried in my drawer for months. People stared, sure, but some smiled. Linda saved us seats. Michael brought rainbow cupcakes. Mrs. Daniels gave a little speech about inclusion and the true meaning of community. And when Ethan's name was mentioned during the volunteer shout-outs, people clapped, real claps. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. After that, Ethan started getting involved with the new HOA committee for youth engagement. Turns out younger families were moving in, and they wanted a neighborhood that felt more modern, more accepting. Ethan proposed building a small community library and starting a mentorship program for teens interested in design and architecture. Claire, as far as we knew, never showed up again to another meeting. Her house stayed dark. For sale signs appeared. And one early morning in the fall, a moving truck arrived. No one saw her leave, no goodbye, no handwritten notes. She disappeared the same way she ruled, quietly, with control. That night, Ethan sat with me on the front step. Do you think she'll ever come around? He asked. I don't know, I said, but you don't have to wait for her to be proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. He didn't respond right away, but he reached over and took my hand. And for the first time since this all started, he didn't let go. By the time winter rolled around, Willow Heights looked different. Not physically, of course. The lawns were still neatly trimmed, the mailboxes were regulation black, and the Christmas decorations were exactly 3 inches from the curb. But something under the surface had changed. The neighborhood didn't feel as stiff anymore. People said hi with meaning instead of obligation. The air felt lighter. It was like someone finally took their foot off the brakes. Ethan, for one, had transformed. He'd gone from someone who flinched at every sideways glance to someone who stood tall at HOA meetings, who hosted backyard movie nights, who stopped apologizing for who he was. He even helped paint a mural on the old tennis court wall with some of the local teens. It showed a pair of hands breaking through stone, with wildflowers growing around them, bold, colorful, alive. And best of all, nobody complained. The HOA had voted to revise the bylaws, too. Out went the vague language about family values and moral standards. In came policies about inclusion, anti-discrimination, and homeowner rights. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and it made people feel like they belonged. Even the holiday potluck, once a stiff, judgmental affair, had turned into something real. People brought dishes from their cultures. Someone played guitar. There was even a group sing-along. Ethan and I stood in the corner, watching it all unfold. Think Claire would have allowed this? He joked. Only if everyone signed a behavior waiver in advance, I said. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind you can't fake. Then something happened that neither of us expected. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It simply said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't ready. I still don't know how to be your mom, but I never stopped being proud of you. Claire." Ethan stared at the screen for a long time. "Do you believe her?" he asked me. "I believe she's trying. That's something," he didn't reply. He just saved the number. No response, no confrontation. Just space. Sometimes that's all people need, a little space to become someone better. The days got colder, and the neighborhood moved on. Claire eventually sold her house to a single dad with twin boys and a golden retriever who barked at leaves. Nobody brought up the past. Nobody whispered about the drama. People were too busy moving forward. Then came the Spring Festival. It was the biggest event Willow Heights had ever pulled off. Food trucks lined the street, kids decorated bikes for a mini parade, and someone even rented a bouncy castle. The new HOA board worked hard to make it feel less like a compliance showcase and more like a celebration of the people who lived here. Ethan was in charge of the main stage. He booked local performers, made a playlist, and even emceed a few events. He was nervous, pacing behind the curtain with a clipboard and a water bottle that he kept squeezing like a stress ball. "You're gonna do great," I told him. "Besides, it's just a bunch of homeowners in cargo shorts. What's the worst that could happen?" He cracked a grin. "You haven't seen Linda when they run out of funnel cake." But when he stepped up to that mic, something changed. He didn't just speak, he owned it. He talked about how far the neighborhood had come, how change wasn't easy, but it was worth it. How communities thrive not when they all look alike, but when they stand together, even in their differences. People cheered. Someone in the crowd shouted, "We love you, Ethan!" And for the first time, he believed it. After the festival, Ethan got an offer to do community consulting for another neighborhood in the next county. They wanted help revitalizing their HOA, making it less rigid, more people-focused. He hesitated at first. "Do I really want to do this full-time?" he asked me. "You changed this place," I said. "Imagine what else you could do." He took the job. Part-time at first, then more. Before long, he was helping neighborhoods across the state rethink how they defined community. Funny how the boy who once hid from HOA meetings became the man leading them. And me? Well, I found my peace too. Watching Ethan grow into himself gave me a new purpose. I stayed involved locally, joined the gardening committee, started writing articles for the HOA newsletter. People began to look at me not just as the guy who housed Claire's son, but as a neighbor, a friend. Even those who once avoided us now waved first. And every so often, I'd catch someone glancing at Ethan, not with judgment, but with quiet admiration. The boy who was once a secret had become a symbol of courage, of change, of the kind of love that doesn't ask for permission. One evening, months later, as we sat on the porch sipping iced tea and watching the sun go down, Ethan leaned back in his chair and said, "I used to think I'd always feel like I didn't belong here." "But now?" I asked. He smiled. "Now I feel like I do. Because I stopped trying to fit in and started helping make it fit me." The neighborhood wasn't perfect, no place is, but it was better, kinder, more real. And in a world full of closed doors and silent stares, sometimes that's more than enough.